Let's go to our text. Our text is going to be 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 8. The text reads as follows: For if the trumpet makes an uncertain sound, who will prepare for battle? I want to read it one more time because that's the verse I'm going to work from. For if the trumpet makes an uncertain sound, who will prepare for battle? Now, to be clear, contextually, this chapter is primarily addressing prophecy in tongues. Paul's assertion is that prophecy is more profitable in a congregational setting. In addition, tongues without interpretation lack edification. I said tongues without interpretation lack edification in a corporate setting. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And so that being said, verse 6 of the same chapter in Corinthians, Paul gives grounds for his stance on tongues by pinpointing there's clear benefit when revelation, knowledge, prophecy, or teaching is spoken. There's clear benefit. Somebody say clear benefit. So and to be clear, we are not dismissing tongues. At the same time, what we're doing is showing the order in which tongues should come. Because what happens too many times, we get caught up with style and preference instead of truth and substance. And so with the truth is substance. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Style doesn't have to carry substance. Preference doesn't have to carry substance. But truth will always carry substance. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And so we don't want to get caught up in the styles. And what I mean by styles, staying true to what the text is actually talking about, is that certain languages become stylish, okay? So when you want to present certain roles in movies or plays or whatever have you, when you think of royalty, it's very hard for you not to think of an English accent. Why? Because the style of that language carries that signal. Oh my God. I say the style of that language carries that signal. And then when you think about slang, there's a certain style that slang makes you think of, right? You think in an urban context, and if we be honest, some of us think in a gutter and a gangster context, when slang, is it not? It's a style of language, and we get caught up in style instead of substance. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And this is what Paul is talking about. And it's interesting to me that he uses trumpets to make his point. But that's not the only instrument that he uses. But I'll get to what we need to get to. Are you with me so far? And so here's the thing, distinction is key. Distinction like the sounds of certain instruments. In verse 7, Paul mentions the flute and the harp. He calls them lifeless things. I hope you're hearing me. He calls them lifeless things. And he uses them as a point of reference. One being a wind instrument, the other being a stringed instrument. Consider this, that their sound production is engaged differently. And by the way, instruments, particularly wind instruments, are categorized by how their sound is produced, not necessarily the material they're made out of. So it's how the sound is produced is what qualifies or categorizes the type of instrument it is called. Here's the principle. Uncertain sounds send uncertain signals. Uncertain sounds send uncertain signals. In the same vein, uncertain senders send uncertain sounds. And what's going on in the body, as we call it, what's going on in the kingdom, as we call it, what's going on with too many believers is there's too many uncertain senders. And my question is, who sent you? Because when a word comes from God, it is a sure word. It is a certain word. So when we are, watch this, when we are articulating a word and there's an uncertainty about it, I have to question who it came from. Because God is not the author of confusion. If you can give me a little liberty, he is not the instrumentalist of confusion. And so, uncertain senders send uncertain sounds. Stay with me. On the flip side, certain sounds send certain signals. Trumpets produce a certain sound. They produce certain sounds. In the military, there's a sound called reveille. What does that mean? Wake up! There's no one who's been in the military that doesn't know what that sound sounds like. You were taught what the sound sounds like, and you were taught what the sound means. And then there's another sound called taps, and that's a somber sound because somebody's come to the end of their watch. Are you hearing what I'm saying? So there are certain sounds that send certain signals, and trumpets produce certain sounds. The text expresses one of those sounds is prepare for battle. Am I in the text? I want you to make sure that you're hearing me principally. And so certain senders send certain sounds. Don't miss this. Whatever sound is sent carries the signal of its sender. Whatever sound is sent, y'all know I teach principle all day. Whatever sound is sent carries the signal of its sender. Let me ask you a question. What signal are you carrying? When you come around, do people come towards you or do they run away from you? And here's the thing, it depends on what company you're in. Because the devil don't like your company if you got the right signal. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Because there's a sound, a signal called resistance that will make him flee from you. Are you hearing what I'm saying? But when there's a soundness to us and when there's a clarity to us, it is easy or it is nearly alluring for people to be drawn to that which you have to present because what you're presenting is loud and clear. And when I say loud and clear, I'm not talking about the volume of your voice. I'm talking about the volume of your content. And if you would, the volume of your volume. Does your volume, let me ask a question to the epistles. Does your volume have any volume? Yeah. Turn up. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Follow me here. Instruments, I want everybody to key in right here. Instruments are purposed to produce certain sounds. Instruments are purposed to produce certain sounds. When they made the flute, they made it to make a certain sound. And every flute thereafter, no matter the adaptation, when you hear a flute should sound like a saxophone. No, a flute should sound like a flute. Are you hearing what I'm saying? So that instrument was purposed to make a certain sound. To produce sound, Father help me on this one. To produce sound, position, pressure, and pace need to be employed. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Position, pressure, and pace. I hope y'all with me on this right here. Watch this. Position speaks to the way the instrument is situated to render its sound. So watch this, the way that you are situated, the way that Yah, the instrumentalist of our life, has situated us, watch, he situates us to render a certain sound. Because unlike lifeless instruments, we are lively instruments, living instruments, if you will. And so trumpets are wind instruments. I need y'all to come all the way with me right here. I say trumpets are wind instruments. Can anybody get with me real quick and say, I'm a wind instrument? Watch this. Man came into being because God blew breath through his nostrils and he became a living soul. Are you hearing what I'm saying? But then there's a second wind. Somebody say a second wind. There's a second wind that he sent at an appointed time. Oh my goodness. I said there was a second wind that he sent at an appointed time. And watch this, when that season came up, there was a certain sound that had to be sounded in order to announce the season. And I'm going to tell you right now that that sound came by the way of trumpets. So before the sound of a mighty rushing wind, there was a wind that was already appointed. There was a wind that was already ordained to be pushed through an instrument that was ordained by God to be conducted and composed or played, if you will, performed by an individual, a person, a priest who was ordained by God. Watch this. So the instruments were ordained and appointed, and so were the instrumentalists. And they would have sounded the sound of the season. And because of what was going on in the earth, those in alignment with the season would have known what that sound meant in that season. And so when he sent that wind, when he sent his spirit, right? And his spirit is what gives us guidance to walk by his word. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And so it is that wind, it is that spirit that pushes us forward into the things of God. And so trumpets, let me get back on text. Trumpets are wind instruments. Therefore, their sound is produced through the mouthpiece. Help me, Holy Ghost. I said their sound is produced through the mouthpiece. So in other words, if you're trying to understand what I'm saying, the instrument is going to be handled. And the instrument is going to be held. And so in order to play that instrument, that means that the instrumentalist has to have his hand on the, God help my soul, I said, in order for the instrument to make the sound that it's designed to make, the instrumentalist must have his hands on the instrument. And if you would, I was talking to a good buddy of mine about this, and I had forgot that he had told me that he was a trumpet. I said, I know there was a reason why the Lord had me to call you. And he said, I was talking to him about this. He said, I just think about, shouts out to Pastor Tim Moses. He said, it just brought to mind the marching band. Now I want you to think about how that trumpet is used in a marching band, because sometimes when we get in church, everything becomes so formal that think we're only supposed to be held a certain way. And we're only supposed to be handled a certain way. But if you ever watch one of them A&T bands and they are playing it, they are swaying and they turning the instrument upside down and inside out. And sometimes you're trying to figure out, God, why is my life moving this way? Because watch this, the sound that I'm going to put through you, I'm going to do it my way. He doesn't march to the tune of our drum. He calls the cadence. He's the composer and the instrumentalist. Guess who the instruments are? Watch this, but he ain't playing with us. Say, he ain't playing with me. And I ain't playing with him. Who? Well, watch this. Watch this. In order for the wind to be pressed through the mouthpiece, the instrument has to be connected to the mouth. I said, in order for the instrument, God help me here, baby. You don't know what you did. I said, in order for the instrument to be played, not played, in order for the instrument to perform as it's designed to perform, it must stay connected. I wonder, are we connected? Watch this. And when the instrument is connected to the mouth, especially when you think about, I need you to think about some Dizzy Gillespie Chiefs right now. And you got to think about oh, God help me here. No, I need you to see, watch this, because when you see that, you see these engrossed, right? And you got to understand the amount of pressure. Because watch this. There's position, and then there's pressure. There's pressure. And I want to get this word to make sure it's called embouchure. And so pressure speaks to the way the wind is blown into the instrument to shape its sound. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And so the instruments are pressed into the mouth of the instrumentalist. And watch this, here's the thing. Living instruments can press in or push away. See, when you have a lifeless instrument, God help me, when you have a lifeless instrument, it can be done with what it wants to be done with. But see, we are not lifeless instruments. We are living instruments, which means that we can choose to press in or to push away. And there are too many pressing away from the mouth of God. I heard the scripture that said man should not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out the mouth of God. Watch this. Behind every word, there's a wind. I want you to try and speak without using your breath. Even if you got excellent and phenomenal breath control, oh, you still got to use it. For vocalists who have great vocal control, they can do runs that are elongated. There was a clip going out by a song that's fairly well known, right? Jesus Be a Love Song, and there's this one thing that he does, and he just does this long, it's a long note. It's a long note, and it takes tremendous breath control to be able to push that note out like that. And watch this. This is why sometimes we got to allow God to use us how he wants to use us. So watch this. I'm long-winded, but it's on purpose. You missed it. I said I'm long. Never mind. Okay. I'll try not to be so long-winded tonight, but it's on purpose. Certain notes just take a certain amount of wind. Are you here? Because usually it's a problem when you're short of breath. And when you're short of breath, usually what are you trying to do? You're trying to catch, help me, you're trying to catch your... I don't even know, I'm going to just say how it's called to me. And some of us are spiritually asthmatic. Walk around church. Shh. Let me stop. But living instruments can press in or push away. Here's the thing. when the instrumentalist, when the creator, when the author has his hands on you, sometimes things are going to turn differently than you expect. Sometimes the pressure that you feel, this is what Holy Ghost gave me. Watch this. Sometimes there's a word in you that you don't want to speak because of the situations that you're going through. Because watch this, how church folk are treating you. Oh, y'all think I'm just talking some personal junk. See, Jeremiah was nearly suicidal. You don't want to hear that part. When we say, Jeremiah said, it was like fire shut up in my bones. It wasn't because he had a word that he wanted to speak. It's because he had a word he didn't want to speak. But he couldn't keep it in because he was too close to Yah. He said it's like, and it's interesting that horns, when you hear horns, it's considered a hot sound. When you're listening to a movie score and something exploding, you're probably going to hear horns being played. We call it hot brass, that hot brass section, right? And so here's the thing. When that sound is being pushed through us, do we have the wherewithal to stay pressed in? Because there's a certain sound that we're purposed to make. Somebody say, there's a certain sound I'm purposed to make. Oh, don't worry. I'm going to tell you what that sound is. And so pace speaks to the timing. Somebody say the timing. Do I need to preach this part? I said pace speaks to the timing in which the wind moves through the instrument for the tempo to the sound. So watch this. There's a timing. No matter what song you heard, no matter what, reveille has a pace to it. It has a tempo to it. Every song that you hear has a tempo to it. They call it BPM, is beats per minute. It's a certain pace and there's a certain tempo to it. So you got to understand, watch this. I can't move when I want to move. I have to move on the timing of the Most High. Because if he says slow down, we finna slow walk this joke. Are you hearing me? When he says run, you... Are you hearing what I'm saying? And so there's an appointed time for trumpets to be blown. Here we are. Give me Numbers 10, 1 and 2. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, make 2 silver trumpets for yourself. You shall make them of hammered work. Hold on, wait a minute. These instruments had to be beaten into form. Let me stop. What does Paul say about his own body? I beat my body into submission. Anyway. You shall make them of hammered work. You shall use them for calling the congregation and for directing the movement of the camps. Are you hearing what I'm saying? So take note here. Instruments produce sound according to their assembly. That was a double. Let me say it again. Instruments produce sound according to their assembly. Here's the thing. Sound distinction produces sound direction. Sound distinction, if I say this note means this, and we've been taught, or this saying means that, or this word means that, every word that I'm saying to you right now only makes sense to you because you've been taught these words. I wonder why we don't move well on his words. Perhaps it's because we have not been taught well. We have been taught that when we receive Holy Ghost, we receive it with the evidence of speaking in tongues. And when the people on the day of Pentecost received tongues, they spoke actual dialects. Now watch this. There is a heavenly language. That heavenly language is for you. Right? So that is a personal setting, not a corporate setting. And Paul says, in a corporate setting, that prophecy is more profitable than tongues. Because he said, what good are the tongues? What good is the style if there's no substance? What good is it if it's not offering what it needs to offer? What if it's not offering any revelation, any knowledge, any prophecy, any teaching? Then what is it doing? I can tell you what it's not doing. It's not edifying. You know what it is doing? Entertaining. And that's the sound that too many have gravitated towards, the sound of entertainment instead of the sound of edification. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And so, watch this. In verse 3 of Numbers 10, blowing both trumpets meant a sound of assembly. So watch this. The people of Israel in this dispensation were taught what the sound of these two trumpets, God help me, these two trumpets would make when they were making the same sound. Somebody say the same sound. At the same time. Because 2 is the number of agreement. So when there was the same sound at the same time, it was a sound of assembly. The text says, all shall gather at the... Do y'all see this? I say, all shall gather at the door of the tabernacle. If you would, it is a corporate and congregational sound. Catch this. It's one sound, and that one sound is kingdom assemble. We got crazy when we was watching Avengers, and Captain America said, Avengers, assemble. I wonder would we get that same notion when we hear the word of the Lord, and the word of the Lord is sure. Kingdom assemble. Assemble where? Assemble where? At the door. At the door of the tabernacle. If you don't know who the door is, I'm trying to figure out what you've been taught. Because if you're looking for a place, you missed the point. Because Yeshua says, I am the door. So watch this. There should never be a disagreement where the kingdom meets. Where do we meet? At the door. What's at the door? There's an altar at the door. If you're looking for a what, you missed the point. Because it's not a what, it's a who. Because we have an altar that those who are of the Levitical thought process have no right to eat from. You know I got text for it. Hebrews 13, just go around there, look around. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Because there was a disagreement about how to get into things, and there was something. So the writer of Hebrews said, like, we're not even worried about the altar that the order of the Levites partook of. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Because we have a greater altar. We have a greater offering, and we have a greater offerer. Yeshua HaMashiach, the one whom we call Christ, the Messiah. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And so we meet, somebody say, at the door. Let's go this way. Verse 4 through 6 of Numbers 10 says, indicates this, that blowing one trumpet was a sound of advance. One trumpet was a sound of advance. The text tells us that leaders and division heads would gather their respective areas, okay? And if you would, this is a regional and local sound. I hope the kingdom is hearing what I'm saying. So watch this. There is a regional and a local sound. But that sound is a sound of assembly for those regions and those localities. So watch this. Yes, different churches will have different sounds. But when there's one sound, it's all at the same door. And there's two instruments playing, right? And so from the text, we have two divisions, if you would. We have an east side and a south side. You know, I hang around south side a little bit. So there's an east side and there's a south side, and they understand that when one sound is made, it's a sound of advance. Watch this. The first sound means the east. The east, this is what the text says, and I need you to receive this. East, begin your journey. Because, watch this, this is a beginning of sorts. It's the beginning of preparation for the next harvest. Because if you haven't done the proper work for this harvest, there's nothing to reap. Help me. And there's some things that we should have sown in its appropriate season that we should be reaping in this season. But because we didn't know when to sow, and sometimes we didn't know what to sow, we missed the window. And so that, God help me, there's a window for you to sow in. And if you miss that window, you have to wait for the next one. And if you should try and plant something out of season and it grows, that's GMO. That is a genetically modified organism. That is not God-born. That is not God-given. Right? And since man made it, it will provide all the things that man provides. Sickness. Are you with me? Because some of us go to our store, we looking for stuff that says no GMO. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Some of us trying to grow our own stuff. Are you hearing what I'm saying? I don't know what y'all putting in this stuff. But when there's a sound, one sound, then the east is instructed to begin their journey. And if there's a second sound, then it's south, begin your journey. Verse 9 says this: in warfare, sound an alarm. Sound an alarm. So watch this. There's a sound of attack. Warfare carries a certain sound, and knowing the sound is critical in warfare. Knowing the sound is critical in warfare. Our text in which we started from, 1 Corinthians 14:8 said this: for if the trumpet makes an uncertain sound, who will prepare for battle? So the reason why too many of us are losing too many battles is because we don't know the sound. Don't know the sound of warfare. Don't know the sound of when to move. Because watch this, some of us in the south trying to move on the east sound. And some of us in the east are trying to move on the south sound. And some of both parties are missing when both sounds are saying, hey, there's one sound that we need to respond to. And there's one location where we need to assemble. At the door. What is the sound? What is the sound? I'm getting to it. Verse 9 says this, in going back to Numbers 10:9. We have Numbers 10:9. And so Numbers 10:9 says this: when you go to war in your land against the enemy who oppresses you, then you shall sound an alarm with the trumpets. Which trumpets? The silver ones. Because watch this, the silver trumpets sound different than the shofar. Are you hearing what I'm saying? They have a different sound because they have a different make. So watch this. There are some things that God is saying, I'm going to need you to use what I tell you to make a particular sound. And then there are some things in which God will say, there are things that I've made which I need you to use to make a certain sound. Either which way it goes, unless I say so, don't use it. Because watch this, whether it be the shofar or the silver instruments, the instruction from both come from the head. They come from the mouth. But are you pressed in or are you pushing away? When you go to war in your land against the enemy who oppresses you, then you shall sound an alarm with the trumpets, and you will be remembered before the Lord your God. So if you know the sound, then the sound causes him to remember. He's telling us to remember the time. And then sound the sound so that he can, never mind, okay. I'll let me just do the text. You shall blow the trumpets, you shall sound an alarm with the trumpets, and you will be remembered before the Lord your God, and you will be saved from your enemies. That's plural. So too many of us are facing, watch this, adversarial forces. We're facing multiple enemy forces simply because we don't know the sound that will cause God to move on our behalf. Because watch this, we want to make the sound the way we want to make the sound. And so watch this, we have sound production without no sound production. And so we know how to engineer a sound. But we're lacking how to produce the sound. Simply because we'd rather make a sound that entertains than a sound that edifies. Watch this. And this is why too many are blown away by the winds of false doctrine. The wind that we allow, the wind that we receive, sets the tone for our life. The wind we receive sets the tone for our life. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Numbers 10:10. Numbers 10:10 says this: also in the day of your gladness. Somebody say, today is the day. Also in the day of your gladness, watch this, in your appointed feast. Somebody give him praise right there. Give him praise right, yeah. Okay, see, when we get the word, we don't know how to act. Also in the day of your gladness, in your appointed feast. Say, here we are. Are you hearing what I'm saying? In your appointed feast and at the beginning of your months. That's all of them. At the beginning of your months, you shall blow the trumpets over your burnt offering and over the sacrifices of your peace offering. And they shall be a memorial for you before your God. I am the Lord your God. So watch this. There's a certain sound for his appointed seasons. And it's the sound of silver trumpets. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Psalms 89:15, just write that one down, gives us this blessing that blessed are the people who know the joyful sound. So, because I know the joyful sound, there's a blessing. And what is blessing? Blessing is more than what I have. It's what's happening to me. It's who we are. Blessed are they who have not seen, but yet believe. So it can't be reduced to tangible things. It can't be reduced to material things. It has to be greater than material things. It has to be greater than tangible things. Watch this. It has to be eternal things, because that's the only things that will last. So watch this. Knowing the joyful sound means that we are eternally blessed. Because we know what one sound of two trumpets sounds like. We know when the east is supposed to move. And we know when the south is supposed to move. And we know when there's warfare. So watch this. Before you begin your next journey, there ought to be a sound. Before you begin, watch this. Before we begin this journey watch this, this season is going to take us into. Because culturally, there are some who will signify that this is a new year. That is not scripturally accurate. It is not a new year. It is a new season. And contrary to popular belief, we can't call time when we want it to. He calls the time. Now, we could be like Issachar and be able to discern the times, but the time is in the hands of the Father. I think I heard Yeshua say that. Seasons are signified by a certain sound. And the sound of appointment is a joyful sound. It's a joyful sound because I know what he's saying to us. It's a joyful sound when we know what he's saying to us. What is he saying to us? What is Yah saying? What is the charge that we need to receive in this season? If it does not edify, eradicate it. End it, exterminate it. Are you hearing what I'm saying? When we are addressing the body, we are not up here for entertainment. Watch this. When you are addressing someone evangelistically, it's not for entertainment purposes. It is for edifying purposes. We don't need the fluff. Style is not demonic, but it should never take precedence. Preference in its rightful place isn't an issue, but it should, watch this, they shouldn't be on the same level. And some of us have allowed the levels of style and preference so that we cannot hear truth and substance, because we want them on the same level and they aren't. And so now style and preference are louder than truth and substance. Entertainment is louder than edification. Excitement is louder than edification. All edification ain't going to excite you. Some edification will have you on your face for real when you hear what God is saying For real. Watch this. And it's not that it's gloom and doom, but it's the weight of the assignment that he's placing on your life. It is going to seem more than what you can bear, because now you've got to bear the weight of your assignment in front of people that say you don't have to carry it. So you will have a Christ-like moment where those who follow you will even say, you can't do, this is not supposed to happen to you. Peter said to Yeshua, you ain't supposed to die. You missing it. You missing it. This is what I was assigned to do. There are things that are assigned to you that are going to look like death to people who are around you. God help me. I said there are things that are going to be assigned to you that look like death to those who are around you. I ain't talking about strangers. I'm talking about to those who are around you. Just know this. You may go down, but you're not staying down. Are you hearing what I'm saying? You may have to die for it, but you won't die from it. Oh, Lord. Are you hearing what I'm saying? But as long as you can watch this, with your last breath, as long as you can put it into the Father's hands, are you hearing what I'm saying? What is Yah saying? If it does not edify, erase it. Get rid of it. What are we doing? What do I want you to receive? Edify by all means necessary. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Edify by all means necessary. Edification ain't going to make you popular. Edification is not going to get you likes on none of your social media. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Shouldn't be doing it for that reason anyway. The call, watch this, the clarion call is to edify. Do you realize that the word clarion is a term that we understood that comes from an instrument called a trumpet? So a term that you and I use when we want to be, watch this, loud and clear, we say it's a clarion call, right? That term is rooted in what an instrument is called. It's a trumpet. Go ahead, Google it, look it up, tell you. Go ahead. I know you're going to. It's fine. I want you to. I want you to. Watch this. Don't take my word for it. Take his. Because there's a wind behind it. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Edify by all means necessary. Since we are set, say I'm set to edify. Watch this. So since I'm set to edify, that which I present, no matter the audience, it ought to be revelation. It ought to be knowledge. It ought to be prophecy or teaching. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Revelation, knowledge, prophecy, teaching. That's the sound. Because that is sound. I want to give you a message titled Clarion Edification. Clarion Edification. What is the word for this season? It's clarion edification. The kingdom needs to know soundness and only move on soundness. Not style, not entertainment, not excitement, not emotion. Soundness, edification. Give God a praise right there. I had to ask God, how do I put this together? How do I put this together? Because I'm like, what's the word for this season? I don't want to go, I've said it many times, I don't want to go through the motions. What is the word for this season? And I cross that scripture and I'll say, God, contextually, I'm trying to be, I'm trying to be theologically sound. What is the text is talking about tongues and prophecy. So I'm like, how does this connect with trumpets? He said, because the sound gave direction. And the direction should be sound. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Because sound creates order. In the beginning was the Word. And the Word was with God. And the Word was God. Watch this. And the Word became flesh and he dwelt among us. And when he ascended, he sent a second. Are you hearing what I'm saying? So when we talk about Clarion Edification, it is the wind that comes behind our words. When that wind comes from the Most High. It is allowing the instrumentalist, the creator, the author, to handle us as he wills. His position, his pressure, his pace. Do we receive that? Give him another praise.